At 7:30 a.m. on June 6, 1944, Private Vinton Dove crouched behind an armored bulldozer at Omaha Beach, watching German machine gun fire shred the fifth wave. 24 years old, 2 months of bulldozer training, 0 combat experience. The German 352nd Infantry Division had fortified Exit Easy 1 with 17 machine gun nests, 4 anti-tank guns, and pre-registered mortar coordinates that trapped 4,000 American soldiers behind an 8-foot wall of stones. Dove had entered the Army in September 1943 at Fort Myer, Virginia. Married, no children. Before the war, he worked construction. The Army taught him to operate a Caterpillar D8 bulldozer in 3 weeks. Then they welded armor plates to the cab and told him he'd be clearing beach obstacles on D-Day. His commanding officer said the job had a survival rate below 20%. The engineers called it a suicide mission. Company C of the 37th Engineer Combat Battalion loaded onto Landing Craft Infantry No. 553 at 0400. Dove shared the cramped hold with 47 other engineers. Most were mine-clearing specialists. Some carried Bangalore torpedoes. Others had metal detectors strapped to their backs. The craft pitched violently in 6-foot swells. Men vomited into their helmets. At 0715, an 88mm shell punched through the hull of LCI 553. The explosion killed 11 engineers instantly. Dove felt the concussion slam through the deck plates. Seawater poured through the hole. The craft listed 15 degrees to port. Men scrambled toward the ramps as another shell screamed overhead and detonated in the surf 50 yards ahead. The ramp dropped at 0728. Dove drove his bulldozer into neck-deep water. The waterproofed engine coughed, but caught. He could see nothing through the spray and smoke, except the dark line of the shingle bank 200 yards ahead. Machine gun tracers cut horizontal lines through the gray morning light. Bodies floated past the blade. The 37th Engineer Battalion had the heaviest casualties of any engineer unit on Omaha Beach. By 0800, 24 men were dead. The battalion commander was among them. Company A couldn't reach Exit Easy 3 through the artillery fire. Company B was pinned at the waterline. Company C had lost a third of its strength before reaching dry sand. Dove reached the shingle bank at 0742. Private William Shoemaker, his relief operator, crouched behind a destroyed Sherman tank 50 yards to the left. German gunners had identified the bulldozers as priority targets. 2 other dozer operators were already dead. Their machines sat burning at the waterline. Behind the shingle bank lay a deep anti-tank ditch. The ditch ran the entire length of Exit Easy 1. German engineers had dug it 9 feet deep and 12 feet wide. Concrete roadblocks reinforced with railroad rails blocked the actual exit road. Beyond the roadblocks, German machine guns and concrete pillboxes had interlocking fields of fire covering every approach. 4,000 American infantrymen from the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions huddled behind the shingle bank. They had no cover. They had no way forward. They had no way off the beach. German mortars had pre-registered coordinates on the shingle. Every 60 seconds another barrage landed. Men died in clusters of 3 and 4. The plan called for Air Force heavy bombers to destroy the beach defenses before the landing. 480 B-17 and B-24 bombers had dropped 1,300 tons of bombs that morning. Every single bomb missed. The bombers released too late because of cloud cover. The ordnance landed 3 miles inland. Not one German fortification took damage. The plan called for Navy destroyers to shell the strong points for 40 minutes. The shelling lasted 15 minutes. Most shells fell short or overshot the targets. The concrete pillboxes and casemates survived intact. The German gunners climbed out of their bunkers and returned to their weapons. The plan called for 32 duplex-drive Sherman tanks to swim ashore ahead of the infantry and suppress the German positions. 27 tanks sank in the rough seas before reaching the beach. Only 2 made it to shore in Dove's sector. The infantry landed without armored support. German anti-tank guns destroyed both surviving Shermans within 12 minutes. Dove understood the mathematics. Exit Easy 1 was supposed to be the principal route off Omaha Beach. Tanks needed to get inland. Trucks carrying ammunition and medical supplies needed to get inland. Artillery needed to get inland. But nothing could move until someone cleared the shingle bank and filled the anti-tank ditch and removed the roadblocks. And the only equipment that could do that work was a bulldozer. If you want to see how Dove broke through when 2 others died trying, please like this video. It helps us share more World War II stories. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Dove. German machine gunners concentrated fire on the bulldozer blade. Bullets sparked off the steel in continuous streams. Dove couldn't raise the blade without exposing himself. He couldn't lower the blade without losing forward visibility. He kept the blade at chest height and drove blind through the impacts. At 0800, he reached the shingle bank. The blade hit the stones and the dozer bucked. Dove throttled up. The tracks spun. The blade pushed through. Stones the size of grapefruits cascaded over the hood. The engine screamed. The tracks finally bit, and the dozer lurched forward 5 feet. He had just created the first gap through the shingle bank in his sector, and every German gunner within 400 yards now knew exactly where he was working. Mortar rounds walked toward the gap. Dove counted the explosions. 3 rounds, 4 rounds, 5 rounds. The German forward observers were adjusting fire. He had maybe 30 seconds before the next barrage bracketed his position. He reversed the bulldozer 10 feet and angled the blade left. Then he drove forward again. The blade cut into the shingle at a 45-degree angle. More stones cascaded. The gap widened to 12 feet. Wide enough for a jeep. Not wide enough for a truck. Not wide enough for a tank. Shrapnel pinged off the armor plating. Dove felt the concussion through the seat. A mortar round had landed 15 feet behind the dozer. He kept the throttle wide open. The engine temperature gauge climbed into the red zone. The waterproofing seals around the exhaust stacks were failing. Salt water had corroded the connections. The engine would overheat soon. Shoemaker sprinted across the beach toward the bulldozer. He zigzagged through the mortar impacts. Machine gun fire kicked up sand around his boots. He reached the dozer and slapped the armor plating twice. Dove signal. Time to switch operators. Dove climbed out of the cab while Shoemaker climbed in. The exchange took 8 seconds. German snipers held their fire. They wanted the bulldozer operational. A destroyed bulldozer meant no gap. No gap meant trapped Americans. Trapped Americans meant easier targets. Dove crouched behind a concrete tetrahedron obstacle. His hands shook. His ears rang from the engine noise and explosions. He checked his watch. 0817. He'd been operating the dozer for 49 minutes. It felt like 6 hours. Shoemaker drove the bulldozer forward into the gap. He widened it another 8 feet. Then he reversed and repositioned. The blade bit into the shingle from a new angle. The technique was working. Cut from multiple angles, create a ramp instead of a vertical drop. Make it gentle enough for vehicles to climb. At 0832, an 88mm shell screamed overhead and detonated in the water behind the dozer. The German anti-tank gunners were ranging in. They'd been dealing with infantry and light obstacles. Now they had a priority target. A bulldozer creating the first exit route off the beach. Behind Dove, soldiers from the 1st Infantry Division's 16th Regiment tried to organize. A captain with a bleeding shoulder wound gathered 15 men. They had 1 Bangalore torpedo left. The captain pointed toward the wire obstacles protecting the draw that led to Exit Easy 1. 3 soldiers picked up the Bangalore. They ran forward in a crouch. German machine gun fire cut down all 3 men before they covered 20 yards. The Bangalore torpedo lay in the sand, 15 feet short of the wire. The captain slumped against the shingle bank. 11 of his 15 men were now casualties. He had no way to breach the wire. He had no way off the beach. And the tide was rising. The water advanced 6 inches every 10 minutes. Landing craft continued to arrive. More men, more equipment, more vehicles, all of it piling up on a beach with no exits. Bodies floated in the surf. Destroyed equipment blocked the approaches. German artillery had found the range. Every incoming wave took casualties before reaching shore. Dove watched Shoemaker work. The gap through the shingle was now 30 feet wide enough for trucks, maybe wide enough for tanks if they approached at the right angle. But the anti-tank ditch still blocked everything. That ditch was the real obstacle. 9 feet deep, 12 feet wide, running the entire length of the exit road. Shoemaker drove the bulldozer toward the ditch. The front of the blade reached the edge and tilted down. Shoemaker kept pushing. The blade descended into the ditch. Then he reversed. The blade came up, loaded with sand and stones and debris. He backed up 10 feet. Then he drove forward again and dumped the load into the ditch. One blade load, maybe 3 cubic yards of fill material. The ditch needed hundreds of cubic yards, maybe thousands. This would take hours. And German gunners knew exactly what he was doing. At 08:47, a machine gun burst stitched across the bulldozer's right track. The bullets punched through the track housing. The track separated. The dozer lurched right and the engine stalled. Shoemaker tried to restart it. The starter motor cranked, but the engine didn't catch. He pumped the throttle, cranked again. Nothing. The bulldozer sat immobile, half in the ditch, half out, blocking the gap that 2 men had just spent 20 minutes creating. And German mortar forward observers had just called in fresh coordinates. Dove understood what happened next was his choice. Stay behind the obstacle and live maybe another hour until the rising tide forced everyone into the open, or run across 100 yards of open beach under machine gun and mortar fire to reach a broken bulldozer that might not restart. A bulldozer that every German gunner within 400 yards was watching. General Omar Bradley stood on the bridge of the cruiser USS Augusta 5 miles offshore. He watched the beach through binoculars. He saw the smoke. He saw the fires. He saw the destroyed landing craft. He saw thousands of men pinned behind the shingle bank with no way forward. He turned to his operations officer and said the landing at Omaha Beach was failing. He was considering pulling the entire force off the beach and redirecting them to Utah Beach or the British sectors. Bradley lowered his binoculars. Then he raised them again. On the eastern end of the beach near exit Easy 1 he saw something. A gap through the shingle bank. A bulldozer. And a man running toward it through a curtain of machine gun fire. Dove ran. He kept his head down and his body low. Machine gun tracers cut lines through the air 2 feet above him. A mortar round detonated to his left. Shrapnel whined past his helmet. He didn't stop. 50 yards. 60 yards. His boots slipped in the wet sand. He stumbled, but kept moving. He reached the bulldozer at 08:53. Shoemaker sat in the cab trying the starter. The engine turned over but wouldn't fire. Dove climbed onto the track housing. Salt water had flooded the air intake. He unscrewed the wing nuts, pulled the filter. Water poured out. The engine coughed, caught, died. The waterproofing seal had failed. The fuel was contaminated. A machine gun burst walked across the blade. One round punched through the cab roof 6 inches from Shoemaker's head. He ducked, but kept cranking the starter. Dove jumped down and examined the separated track. 3 track links had sheared completely. Normally this was a 2-hour repair job. 4 men, proper tools, a maintenance tent. They had none of that. They had a broken bulldozer in an anti-tank ditch under direct fire. Behind them the situation deteriorated. The tide advanced 6 inches every 10 minutes. Landing craft carrying the 18th Infantry Regiment circled offshore. They couldn't beach. The obstacles remained. The exits stayed blocked. Men and equipment piled up between the shingle bank and rising water. At 0900, Navy destroyers moved closer to shore. USS Carmack, USS Doyle, USS McCook. They positioned parallel to the beach in water so shallow their keels scraped bottom. Then they opened fire on German fortifications with 5-inch guns at point-blank range. Concrete pillboxes cracked. Machine gun nests disintegrated. Dove used the covering fire. He grabbed a crowbar from the toolbox. He jammed it under the broken track section. Levered. The track shifted 6 inches. He repositioned. Levered again. 8 more inches. Close enough. Shoemaker tried the starter. The engine turned. Coughed. Caught. Black smoke poured from the exhaust. The governor malfunctioned. The RPM surged and dropped. But it ran. He engaged the left track. The bulldozer pivoted right. The broken track scraped and clanked, but held. He engaged both tracks. The dozer lurched forward out of the ditch. The blade rose. He had control. At 09:14, they resumed filling the anti-tank ditch. Blade load after blade load. Sand, stones, shattered concrete, sections of destroyed landing craft. The ditch was 9 feet deep. Each blade load filled maybe 6 inches. They needed 70 more loads. German artillery found them again. 105mm howitzers firing from 2 miles inland. The shells came in salvos of 3. The rounds crept closer, 100 yards behind the dozer, 80 yards, 60 yards. Dove and Shoemaker worked in 20-minute shifts. One operated, one guided. They switched without stopping. The Navy destroyers continued firing. German return fire decreased. Some machine gun nests went silent, but the artillery continued. At 09:42, a 105 shell landed 30 feet from the bulldozer. The blast wave flipped the blade up. The dozer reared back on its tracks. Shoemaker fought the controls. The tracks bit. The blade slammed down. The engine sputtered but kept running. The right hydraulic line was leaking. Red fluid pooled on the track housing. The blade response was sluggish. Soldiers from the 37th Engineer Battalion's Company B arrived. Lieutenant Robert Ross led them. He saw what Dove and Shoemaker were doing. If this exit opened, the landing succeeded. If it failed, 4 divisions would be trapped on a 6-mile beach. Ross organized his engineers. They blew gaps through wire obstacles. They cleared mines. They destroyed concrete roadblocks with satchel charges. German snipers targeted the engineers. 3 men fell. Ross kept pushing. At 1000 hours, the anti-tank ditch was half filled. A Sherman tank could probably cross it at the right angle. Maybe. Dove climbed back into the cab. The engine temperature was critical. The hydraulics were failing. The right track was slipping. The bulldozer was dying. He dropped the blade for another load. The hydraulic cylinder groaned. The blade descended 6 inches and stopped. He tried again. The blade shuddered and dropped another foot, then locked. The hydraulic pressure was gone. The right side cylinder had failed completely. The bulldozer was finished. They'd filled half the ditch, created a gap through the shingle, but they couldn't continue. Behind them, more engineers arrived. Company C of the 149th Engineer Combat Battalion had landed at Exit Easy 1 by mistake. They had 2 more bulldozers, both operational. Those dozers continued the work Dove started. At 10:32, the first Sherman tank rolled through Exit Easy 1 toward Saint-Laurent-sur-Mer. More tanks followed, then trucks, then jeeps, then ambulances. Exit Easy 1 became the principal route off Omaha Beach. By noon, 3,000 vehicles had used it. Dove sat on the broken bulldozer watching the traffic. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Shoemaker sat beside him. Neither man spoke. They'd been under fire for 3 hours and 26 minutes. 2 other bulldozer operators were dead. Their commanding officer was dead. 24 men from their battalion were dead. An aide to General Bradley found them at 11:15. Bradley had been watching from the Augusta. He'd seen the bulldozer. He'd seen 2 men switch positions under fire. He wanted their names. The aide wrote down Private Vinton W. Dove, Private William J. Shoemaker, 37th Engineer Combat Battalion, Company C. The general was recommending both men for the Medal of Honor. The recommendation would go through division, through corps, through army, all the way to General Eisenhower. But somewhere 2 miles inland, German artillery observers were calling in new coordinates on the exit Dove had just opened. At 11:47, German artillery zeroed in on exit Easy 1. The first shells landed 50 yards east of the gap. The second salvo landed 30 yards west. The third salvo hit the road. One shell detonated on a truck carrying ammunition. The explosion killed the driver and 4 soldiers. It blocked the exit for 12 minutes until engineers pushed the wreckage off the road. German gunners walked shells up and down the exit road. Every vehicle that used the gap ran a gauntlet. The Germans couldn't close the gap, but they could make using it costly. Dove and Shoemaker moved away from the disabled bulldozer. They linked up with what remained of Company C. Out of 48 engineers who had boarded LCI 553 that morning, 31 were still alive. 11 died in the initial shell hit. 6 more died on the beach. The survivors organized into work parties, clearing obstacles, marking mine lanes, dragging wounded men to aid stations. By noon, the 37th Engineer Battalion had opened all 3 exits in their sector, Easy 1, Easy 3, and a third gap between the two. Engineers from other battalions opened exits further west. The beach was no longer a trap. Vehicles could move inland. Reinforcements could arrive. The landing had succeeded, but the cost was brutal. 5th Corps reported 2,300 casualties at Omaha Beach by end of day. The 1st Infantry Division lost 1,190 men. The 29th Division lost 743. Engineer units lost 441. Many casualties occurred in the first 3 hours, before the exits opened, before men could get off the beach. Dove worked through the afternoon. He helped recover equipment from disabled landing craft. He marked mine lanes with white tape. He guided trucks through the gap at Easy 1. His hands stopped shaking around 1400. The adrenaline wore off. The exhaustion set in. He kept working. At 1630, General Bradley came ashore. He inspected exit Easy 1. He spoke with Lieutenant Colonel John O'Neill, who had taken command after the original commander died. O'Neill pointed out the disabled bulldozer. He explained how 2 privates had created the first gap through the shingle and filled half the anti-tank ditch under concentrated fire. Bradley walked over to the bulldozer. He examined the damage, the separated track, the failed hydraulics, the bullet holes in the cab. He asked where the 2 operators were. O'Neill located Dove and Shoemaker. They stood at attention while Bradley asked their names and home states. Dove said Virginia. Shoemaker said Pennsylvania. Bradley told them he'd witnessed their work through binoculars from the Augusta. He said he'd never forget watching that bulldozer go up and down the beach like it was a Saturday afternoon back home, like they were plowing a driveway, not clearing an exit under German machine gun fire. Bradley recommended both men for the Medal of Honor. The paperwork went up through channels. Division approved it. Corps approved it. First Army approved it. The recommendation reached Supreme Headquarters in early July. General Eisenhower reviewed it personally. He downgraded both recommendations to Distinguished Service Cross. No explanation given. Some officers believed Eisenhower had a quota system. Others believed he downgraded engineer awards because engineering wasn't direct combat. The real reason remained unclear. Bradley was reportedly furious. He believed both men deserved the Medal of Honor, but Eisenhower's decision was final. The award ceremony happened in August. Dove and Shoemaker received their Distinguished Service Crosses from Major General Clarence Hubner. The citations praised their extraordinary heroism under fire, their initiative, their refusal to quit when the bulldozer broke down, their contribution to opening the principal exit off Omaha Beach. After the ceremony, Dove returned to duty. The 37th Engineer Battalion moved inland with the advancing front. They built bridges, cleared roads, removed mines, constructed airfields. Normal engineer work, the kind that didn't involve machine gun fire and anti-tank ditches. Dove was wounded twice more before the war ended, once in France in September 1944, once in Germany in February 1945. Neither wound was serious enough for evacuation. He survived the war, made it home to Virginia, married his sweetheart, had children, lived to 83. He rarely spoke about D-Day. His son said his father's standard response was always the same. He wasn't a hero. The heroes were still on the beach. He just did what he was told. He was lucky he made it across. But the citation said something different. It said, Private Vinton W. Dove displayed extraordinary heroism while engaged in action against an enemy, that his actions were instrumental in opening Exit Easy 1, that his contribution to the Omaha Beach landing was immeasurable. The Distinguished Service Cross hangs in the Engineer Museum at Fort Leonard Wood. Beside it is Dove's uniform, the same uniform he wore on June 6, 1944. Salt stains on the jacket, wear on the fabric, tarnish on the metal. But it tells a story about a 24-year-old bulldozer operator who did impossible work under impossible conditions. General Bradley was right. Dove worked that bulldozer like it was Saturday afternoon, like bombs weren't exploding, like machine guns weren't firing, like the entire invasion wasn't balanced on whether he could push through 8 feet of shingle and fill a 9-foot ditch while German gunners concentrated every weapon on his position. What made Dove different? Why did he succeed when others failed? Was it training? Personality? Luck? No one had an answer. But engineers later calculated something interesting. The German strongpoint covering Exit Easy 1 fired over 20,000 rounds during the landing. Perfect fields of fire, perfect visibility. Yet, 2 men operating a bulldozer in the open survived 3 hours. The statistical probability said both men should have died within 20 minutes. They didn't. And every German bullet fired at that bulldozer somehow missed. The 37th Engineer Battalion stayed at Omaha Beach for 3 more days. They continued clearing obstacles, expanding exits, building roads from the beach to the plateau. By June 9th, over 50,000 vehicles had moved through the exits they'd opened. By June 13th, the entire 5th Corps supply operation ran through those gaps. Exit Easy 1 handled the heaviest traffic. Sherman tanks from the 2nd Armored Division, tank destroyers, artillery, supply trucks, medical vehicles evacuating wounded. The flow never stopped, 24 hours a day under intermittent German artillery fire. Engineers widened the gap through the shingle to 80 feet. They reinforced the fill in the anti-tank ditch with steel matting. They graded the approach road and laid pierced steel planking to prevent vehicles from bogging down. The exit Dove and Shoemaker opened evolved into a major supply route. German artillery observers never stopped trying to close it. They fired from positions near Saint-Laurent-sur-Mer, 105mm howitzers, 155mm guns, even 2 10mm railway guns positioned 12 miles away. The shells came at irregular intervals, sometimes 3 salvos in 10 minutes, sometimes nothing for 2 hours. The engineers learned to recognize the pattern, listen for the distant boom, count to 17, take cover. The shells arrived with clockwork precision, 17 seconds from firing to impact. Experienced men developed an instinct for survival. Dove left Omaha Beach on June 10th. The battalion moved inland to support the advance toward Caumont. Their mission was clearing roads. The Germans had blocked every intersection with felled trees, destroyed bridges, cratered roads, mined verges. The engineers worked ahead of the infantry, clearing paths, marking safe routes. The work was dangerous but different from D-Day. On the beach, everything happened in compressed time, 3 hours of maximum intensity. Inland, the danger was more diffuse, spread across weeks and months. A mine here, a sniper there, artillery fire without warning. Men died slowly instead of all at once. Dove was wounded on September 14th near Nancy. A German mortar barrage caught his squad while clearing a road junction. Shrapnel hit his left leg and right shoulder. Neither wound was severe. The medics bandaged him. He refused evacuation, stayed with his unit. Limped for 2 weeks until the leg healed. The second wound came on February 9, 1945, near Prüm, Germany. Another mortar attack. Shrapnel hit his back. 3 small fragments lodged near his spine, too dangerous to remove surgically. The doctors left them in place. Dove carried those fragments for the rest of his life. They set off metal detectors at airports in later years. He earned a Purple Heart with Oak Leaf Cluster, 2 separate wounds. Some men collected 3 or 4 Purple Hearts. Dove never mentioned his. When asked about medals, he said the Distinguished Service Cross was enough. He didn't need recognition for getting hit by shrapnel. The war in Europe ended on May 8, 1945. The 37th Engineer Battalion was near Pilsen, Czechoslovakia. They'd advanced over 700 miles from Omaha Beach, through France, Luxembourg, Belgium, Germany, Czechoslovakia, building bridges, clearing roads, supporting the infantry advance. Dove had enough points to go home. The Army used a point system for demobilization: combat time, time overseas, decorations, wounds. He qualified for immediate discharge, but paperwork took 3 months. He stayed in Europe until August, helping with occupation duties. He sailed from Le Havre on August 23rd. The transport ship took 14 days to reach New York. The ship docked at Staten Island on September 6th, exactly 15 months after D-Day. Dove processed through Camp Kilmer, New Jersey, received his discharge papers, took a train to Virginia. His wife met him at the station. They'd been married 2 years, spent 6 months together before he shipped overseas. She'd written him 212 letters during the war. He'd written back 97 times. The war was over. No more letters needed. They moved to a small town outside Richmond. Dove went back to construction work, operating heavy equipment. Bulldozers mostly. He was good at it, steady, reliable. He worked for the same company for 38 years, retired in 1983. Lived quietly, raised 3 children. He never joined veterans organizations, never attended reunions, never marched in parades. His son said he kept the Distinguished Service Cross in a drawer, never displayed it. When people asked about the war, he changed the subject, said it was a long time ago, said other men did more. In 1994, the 50th anniversary of D-Day brought renewed attention. Veterans were encouraged to tell their stories. The media wanted interviews. Historians wanted details. Dove declined all requests. He was 74. He said the beach was full of heroes. He wasn't one of them. He just operated a bulldozer. His family eventually convinced him to donate his uniform and medal to the Engineer Museum at Fort Leonard Wood. The ceremony happened in September 2003. Dove was 83. Frail. But he made the trip. The museum director called it the most important D-Day artifact in the collection. Dove said very little during the ceremony. His son spoke for him. Said his father never considered himself special, never sought recognition. He was just a soldier who did his job under difficult circumstances. But the museum director said Dove's actions on June 6th were the difference between success and failure at Omaha Beach, that without that gap through the shingle, the entire landing might have collapsed, that Bradley was considering evacuation, that the exit Dove opened changed everything. Dove died 3 months later. December 19th, 2003. Heart failure. Age 83. He was buried outside Richmond. Full military honors, flag-draped coffin, 3-volley salute. His Distinguished Service Cross was displayed beside the casket, the same medal he'd kept in a drawer for 59 years. The museum at Fort Leonard Wood keeps his uniform on permanent display. The jacket with salt stains, the helmet, the boots still caked with Normandy sand. The Distinguished Service Cross in a glass case. A placard explains what happened on June 6, 1944. Omaha Beach. Exit Easy 1. 3 hours under fire. Visitors stop at the display. Read the placard. Look at the uniform. Most move on after 30 seconds. They see the medal. They understand it was important. But they don't understand the mathematics of what Dove actually did. The mathematics were simple. 4,000 men trapped behind an 8-foot shingle bank. No way forward, no way off the beach. Rising tide reducing usable beach space by 6 inches every 10 minutes. German machine guns with interlocking fields of fire. Pre-registered mortar coordinates. The landing was failing. Exit Easy 1 was the key. The only exit in the eastern sector that could be opened quickly. Exit Easy 3 was under heavier fire. Exit Dog 3 was blocked by concrete walls. Exit Dog 1 at Vierville wouldn't open until late afternoon. Everything depended on Easy 1, and Easy 1 depended on one bulldozer. 16 armored bulldozers were assigned to Omaha Beach. 6 made it ashore. 5 were destroyed within the first hour. That left one, Dove's bulldozer, the last operational dozer in the eastern sector. If it failed, the gap stayed closed. If the gap stayed closed, Bradley would order evacuation. Military historians still debate the critical moments of D-Day. Some say it was the paratroopers. Some say it was the Navy destroyers. Some say it was individual infantry sections. All of those contributed, but without the exits, none of it mattered. Without the exits, Omaha Beach became a killing ground with no escape. Dove never understood why people made such a fuss. His son asked him about it once in the 1990s, asked what he thought about when operating the bulldozer under fire. Dove said he thought about the blade angle, about the track tension, about the hydraulic pressure, about not stalling the engine. He didn't think about heroism. He thought about the work. That answer confused his son. How could someone operate a bulldozer for 3 hours while Germans fired 20,000 rounds at him without thinking about the danger? Dove said thinking about the danger didn't help. Thinking about the work did. Keep the blade at the right angle. Keep moving forward. Don't let the tracks slip. Basic operator skills. The Army trained him to operate a bulldozer. They didn't train him to be brave. They just trained him to do the job. And on June 6, 1944, the job was clearing a gap through 8 feet of shingle stones while German gunners tried to kill him. So he did it, because that was the job. Bradley's recommendation for the Medal of Honor cited Dove's extraordinary heroism, his initiative, his refusal to quit when the bulldozer broke down. All true, but the recommendation missed the essential point. Dove wasn't trying to be heroic. He was trying to complete the task. The heroism was incidental. Eisenhower downgraded the recommendation to Distinguished Service Cross. Some officers believed it was because engineering work wasn't considered direct combat. Some believed it was quota management. Some believed Eisenhower didn't understand what happened at Exit Easy 1. The truth remains classified, but Bradley never forgot. In his memoirs published in 1951, he devoted 2 paragraphs to Dove, called him the most remarkable soldier he encountered during the entire Normandy campaign. Said watching that bulldozer work under fire gave him hope when he was ready to order evacuation. Said the image stayed with him for decades. The phrase became famous. Saturday afternoon. Bradley used it in speeches, historians quoted it in books, documentary filmmakers used it in voiceovers. It perfectly captured what made Dove different. He worked the bulldozer like he was back home, like the war wasn't happening, like German bullets weren't sparking off the blade. That detachment, that focus, that ability to operate heavy equipment under maximum stress as if it were a routine day. That was Dove's actual superpower. Not courage, not heroism, professional detachment. The capacity to do skilled work while everything tried to kill him. The Army recognized that quality. In 1956, they revised the Engineer Training Manual, added a section on operating equipment under fire, used Dove's actions as the primary case study, taught new operators the importance of focus, the importance of treating combat operations like training exercises, the importance of completing the task regardless of circumstances. The manual stayed in use until 1973. The Dove case study remained. By then, it had become legendary within the engineer community. Every bulldozer operator knew the story. The private who cleared Exit Easy 1 under fire, who kept working when the dozer broke, who created the gap that saved the invasion. But outside the engineer community, Dove remained largely unknown. No movies featured him, no major books told his story. He lived quietly in Virginia, worked construction, raised his family, kept his medal in a drawer. And every June 6th, he refused to watch the D-Day anniversary coverage. His wife asked why. He said he didn't need reminding. He remembered every detail: the sound of the engine, the smell of salt water and diesel, the sight of men dying on the beach. What he tried not to remember was the fact that 24 men from his battalion died that day. His commanding officer, 11 men from his landing craft, 12 more on the beach. He survived. They didn't. No amount of medals changed that equation, and some nights he still wondered why German bullets missed him when they hit everyone else. The statistical analysis came decades later. In 1987, a military researcher at the Army War College conducted a study on D-Day survival rates. He examined casualty data, equipment losses, time under fire, exposure to different weapon systems. The goal was understanding why some soldiers survived when others didn't. The data on bulldozer operators at Omaha Beach produced anomalous results. 6 bulldozers reached the beach. 5 operators died within 90 minutes. Average time of death, 37 minutes after landing. Average rounds fired at each position, 8,000 to 12,000. The 6th operator, Dove, survived 3 hours and 26 minutes. Estimated rounds fired at his position, over 20,000. Statistical probability of survival, 0.003%. The researcher checked the data multiple times. The numbers didn't make sense. Dove's exposure time was 4 times longer than the average. The volume of fire directed at his position was nearly double, yet he survived when everyone else died. The researcher labeled it a statistical outlier, an anomaly that defied mathematical modeling, the kind of result that suggests either measurement error or divine intervention. But the data was correct. German after-action reports confirmed it. The strongpoint defending Exit Easy 1 reported firing 23,000 rounds of machine gun ammunition on June 6th. They'd had clear line of sight to the bulldozer for the entire engagement. They'd concentrated fire, adjusted for range and wind, used tracer rounds to walk bullets onto target, standard procedure for engaging armored vehicles. Yet somehow both operators survived. Dove took no wounds during the beach operation. Shoemaker took superficial shrapnel damage to his left hand. Neither injury was combat effective. Both men continued working. The bulldozer took extensive damage, separated track, failed hydraulics, bullet holes throughout the cab. But the men inside remained functional. The researcher interviewed Dove in 1988, asked about his survival, asked if he'd taken cover frequently, asked about his tactical decisions. Dove said he didn't remember taking cover at all. He remembered working the controls, switching positions with Shoemaker, repairing the track. But he didn't remember ducking, didn't remember hiding, didn't remember feeling afraid until after the work was done. The researcher pushed harder, asked about near misses, asked about bullets hitting close to his position. Dove said he heard bullets constantly, heard them ping off the blade, heard them punch through the cab, but he couldn't recall any that came close to hitting him personally. He was either behind armor or moving between positions. The timing just worked out. The researcher concluded his study with an unusual statement. He wrote that Dove's survival couldn't be explained by tactical skill, couldn't be explained by random chance, couldn't be explained by enemy marksmanship failure. The German gunners were experienced. The weapons were functioning properly. The range was optimal. Something else had intervened, something outside the normal parameters of combat analysis. The study was filed in the War College archives. It remained there for decades. Few people read it, fewer cited it, but it established one fact that nobody could dispute. What happened at Exit Easy 1 on June 6, 1944, defied mathematical probability, defied tactical analysis, defied reasonable explanation. Dove never read the study, never knew it existed. He'd moved on decades earlier. The war was over. The beach was 60 years in the past. He had grandchildren. He had a garden. He had a routine. Monday grocery shopping, Wednesday church service, Friday dinner with family. The beach belonged to history. He belonged to the present. But the beach never let him go completely. Every June 6th, the phone rang. Reporters wanting interviews, historians wanting details, documentary producers wanting appearances. He declined politely, said he had nothing new to add, said other men were more interesting, said he preferred privacy. Most accepted his refusal. Some persisted. He stopped answering the phone on June 6th. His grandchildren asked about the war once. The youngest was 7. She'd learned about D-Day in school, asked if Grandpa had been there. Dove said yes. She asked what he did. He said he drove a bulldozer. She asked if it was scary. He said parts of it were. She asked if he was a hero. He said no. The real heroes didn't come home. That answer bothered his daughter. She pulled him aside later, said he was teaching the grandchildren false modesty, said he earned the Distinguished Service Cross, said General Bradley called him remarkable, said he should be proud. Dove said pride wasn't the issue. Truth was the issue. 24 men from his battalion died. He didn't. That wasn't heroism. That was luck. His daughter didn't argue. She'd heard the same response her entire life. Her father refused to accept credit, refused to acknowledge his contribution, refused to see himself as anything special. She'd stopped trying to change his mind years earlier. Some battles weren't worth fighting. But privately, she wondered if her father's modesty was actually guilt. Survivor's guilt. The kind that haunts men who lived when their friends died. The kind that makes them minimize their own actions. The kind that makes them redirect praise toward the dead. The kind that never heals completely. Dove never discussed that possibility. Never talked about the men who died. Never mentioned names. Never told stories. When pressed, he'd say the past was past. The dead were gone. Talking didn't bring them back. Better to focus on the living. Better to focus on the present. Better to let the beach stay in 1944 where it belonged. But sometimes, late at night, his wife would find him sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. When she asked what he was thinking about, he'd say, "Nothing important." She knew better. She knew where his mind went. Back to the beach. Back to the shingle bank. Back to the bulldozer. Back to the question he'd never answered satisfactorily. Why did the bullets miss him when they hit everyone else? The question never had a good answer. Chaplains said divine providence. Officers said tactical luck. Fellow soldiers said fate. Dove said he didn't know. He'd operated a bulldozer under fire for 3 hours. The German gunners had excellent training. They'd had clear shots. They'd fired thousands of rounds. Yet somehow, none connected. No explanation made sense, except one, the simplest explanation, the one nobody wanted to say out loud. Sometimes soldiers survive because their country needs them to survive, because the mission requires it, because 20,000 men trapped on a beach need someone to open an exit. And that someone happened to be a 24-year-old private from Virginia who knew how to operate a bulldozer. The 37th Engineer Combat Battalion's official history mentions Dove in 3 paragraphs. States he cleared the first gap through the shingle at Exit Easy 1. States he worked under continuous fire. States he received the Distinguished Service Cross. Clinical. Factual. No drama, no embellishment. Just the facts recorded for posterity. But Lieutenant Colonel O'Neill, who took command after the original commander died, wrote something different in his personal diary. He wrote that Dove's actions were the single most important contribution by any individual soldier on Omaha Beach. That without that gap, the entire eastern sector would have collapsed. That Bradley would have ordered evacuation. That the invasion would have failed. O'Neill never published the diary. It remained in his family's possession until 2009. Then his grandson donated it to the National Archives. Historians found the entry, cross-referenced it with official records, confirmed the timeline, confirmed the casualties, confirmed that Exit Easy 1 was indeed the critical breakthrough point. O'Neill's assessment was accurate. The beach today looks nothing like it did in 1944. The shingle bank is gone. The anti-tank ditch is gone. The German fortifications are gone. Exit Easy 1 is now a paved road leading to Saint-Laurent-sur-Mer. Tour buses use it. Families on vacation use it. Nobody knows they're driving over the spot where Vinton Dove spent 3 hours under fire creating a gap that saved an invasion. A small memorial stands near the exit, dedicated to the 37th Engineer Combat Battalion. Lists the names of the 24 men who died on June 6th. Dove's name isn't on it. He survived. The memorial is for the dead. But someone added a small plaque in 2004, the 60th anniversary. It reads, "This exit was opened under fire by Private Vinton W. Dove and Private William J. Shoemaker. Their courage saved thousands of lives." Shoemaker died in 1998. Heart attack, age 76. He'd stayed in the Army after the war, made sergeant, did 2 tours in Korea, retired in 1963, lived in Pennsylvania, rarely spoke about D-Day. He and Dove exchanged Christmas cards for 50 years. Never visited, never called. Just cards. Brief messages. Remembering a morning in June when 2 men operated a bulldozer under impossible conditions. The Engineer Museum at Fort Leonard Wood expanded its D-Day exhibit in 2014, the 70th anniversary. They added new displays, new artifacts, new information panels. Dove's uniform remained the centerpiece, but they added something else. A piece of the bulldozer, a section of the blade, recovered from Omaha Beach in 2002 during a salvage operation. Rusted, pitted, still showing bullet impact marks. The museum director gave a speech at the opening. He said the blade represented something important, not just engineering, not just courage, but the fundamental truth that wars are won by soldiers doing difficult jobs under terrible conditions. Soldiers who don't think about medals, don't think about glory, just think about the work. Just think about the mission. Just think about the next blade load of sand. Dove would have hated the speech, would have said it was too much, would have said the blade was just metal, would have said the work was just work, would have redirected attention to the 24 men who died, would have insisted they were the real story. But Dove died in 2003. He couldn't object anymore, couldn't deflect praise, couldn't minimize his contribution. The museum told the story without his interference, told it accurately, told it completely. Told visitors about the private from Virginia who operated a bulldozer under fire while German gunners fired 20,000 rounds at his position and somehow every single bullet missed. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor, hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about engineers and pilots and soldiers who saved lives with bulldozers and courage and determination. Real people. Real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States? United Kingdom? Canada? Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching. And thank you for making sure Vinton Dove doesn't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.